Welcome back to the program, everyone. So let's get to head to that conversation, really very essential this morning. We've heard from many Nigerians, but let's get to speak to someone who is South African and hear what exactly his thoughts are. Faswane Palele is the president, Pan-Africanist Youth Congress of Tanzania. He joins us live on the program. Thank you indeed, Faswane, for agreeing to talk to us here on Channel CV.
Thank you very much, my brother. We really appreciate the opportunity. I'm not a president of the Pan-Africanist Youth Congress of Tanzania. I am otherwise the presidential spokesperson, which means I speak on behalf of the president of the party. I just needed to make that clarity so that it sinks.
All right.
But my name is Faswane Palele, and I'm a Pan-Africanist activist.
Yes. So I'm not sure exactly where your residence in SA. You can begin your thoughts with that, but all of what has played out now, you seem to think that the migration of Africans is historical and due to economic reasons. I mean, we all know that. But for you and your party, how have you had to receive the fact that your fellow brothers from the continent have had to go through series of harassment?
Well, it's very unfortunate. From the PAYCO point of view, we are very disheartened, but we also provided an analysis in our statement. Just after President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, gave his view on the 7th of this month. We depart from the point that we recognize the challenges related to migration, and we analyze society from that point, that we do not dismiss the reality of the problems we face, but we also contextually level these challenges that we are facing with the failures and the challenges facing our own government. I mean, there is a problem of border control in South Africa. There is a challenge of porous borders where illegal immigrants, save to mention African or non-African by origin, but there are so many illegal immigrants in South Africa that are here illegally. And this is not only a matter of a failing government in South Africa, but it's also a question of failing African states that are simply not servicing their people. It cannot always be that, you know, the argument is leveled to economics at all times. There are many of our brothers who are unfortunately running away from their countries for various reasons. And when they get to South Africa, instead of following the laws of the country and ultimately be integrated into society as people who are asylum seekers and people who are here basically to look for economic opportunities and properly be categorized as economic migrants, people simply come and commit all forms of criminality, and they are never held accountable. It's very complex to trace a person that is not recorded in the country systems when they commit this particular crime. But at the level of our party, our position is clear. There is no foreigner in Africa who is African like me and you. I mean, the question of immigration itself must be traced on a historical context, in that it cannot be taken at a face value. These are attributable to the failures of our government to enforce legal immigration as such. This can also be attributed to issues of unemployment, issues of dilapidating school infrastructure across the continent, not only here in South Africa, but across the continent, which are factors basically that pushes people away from their places of origin and go look for other better opportunities in different places across the world. Obviously, for African children, the first point to go to will always be Africa. It only comes to the question of where in Africa do we choose to go. But there are serious factors underwriting the movement of people from one country to another. In the neoclassical theory of migration, because PAYCO and its leadership divulges theory a lot to understand how to analyze society. And when we engage the neoclassical theory of migration, it assists us to navigate these challenges that are persisting today, in that they are in three classes by nature. The first class is that these problems that we are facing as a people, as a continent, and ultimately as different parts which are called countries, is that they are at a micro level. We are dealing with individual views and individual perspectives and feelings. We're dealing with how individuals that Lenin describes as the power that was created by the very people, but consistently grows above the people themselves. These are the individuals whose feelings and egos and all of this are now taken into account at the micro level. But at the macro level, which is the second aspect, this now issues broadens out. This is where you speak of economic migration, you speak of socio-economic migration, you speak of educational migration, where people come to the country because they are seeking educational studies and not only job opportunities.
If you can hear me.
At a meso level, just to conclude it quickly, at a meso level of our analysis is the fact that society generally is looked at in terms of social groupings and how various groupings are larger than the other, and they are able.
All right, Paswani, I think you've made your point. Paswani, you've made your point. So a direct question: where does PAYCO stand with xenophobic attacks on Africans? I use that word deliberately. Where does your party and you stand? Because we've had Africans, even Cyril, President Cyril Ramaphosa said, oh, South Africa is not xenophobic, trying to talk about regularization, issue of border control and all of that. Other grammar we've heard. Where does your party stand before I ask my next question, as far as the issue of xenophobic attacks is concerned?
Well, the party is very firm on the position of xenophobia. We completely condemn xenophobia. We are not anti-African. We are pro-Africans. Any organization of our people on the lines of language, on the lines of how people differently speak, or where people originally come from, is completely condemned by PAYCO. We call on calm across the country, in that African brothers should not be looked at in the same lenses that the apartheid enemy was properly located and looked at.
All right. Now,
so we do not agree with xenophobia against Africans.
Yes, I know Jacinta leads the March on March, and the other gentleman, I can't remember his name. And sometimes people have analyzed and said, it's difficult not to believe that there is an element of complicity in the government, given that citizens are now enforcers of issues around migration. That cannot happen in Nigeria, I can tell you that for a fact. But let's even broaden it further, because it sounds more like Afrophobia than even xenophobia. Because all of this thing that's going on in KZN, in Durban, is happening in Johannesburg, in Gauteng. I don't hear it happening in places like Western Cape. Let's even say Cape Town, for instance, controlled by DA, where you have a lot of Dutch people, the Afrikaans, and all of these European migrants. Are these people that are marching saying that it's only black people that are illegally staying in South Africa and there are no undocumented whites from Europe, whether it's Dutch, French, or German?
Well, I mean, that argument has been persistent as to the question of who, in terms of the color lines, is an illegal immigrant. And so I can tell you something that many people in the country do not know. South Africa is a maritime economy, which means most of the economic activity taking place in South Africa happens through the oceans, where services are interchanged. So whether it's clothes that we're wearing, it's food that we're eating, or whatever the kind of service, it goes in and out of the country via the oceans. In the maritime safety security sector, it is reported that over 144,000 illegal immigrants that are white in color, who originally come from England, Sweden, and all those Baltic states in the West, are reported there. But the state, which is an organ of the continuity of the irreconcilability of class antagonisms, is the one that is failing our people. I mean, from where we stand as PAYCO, we do not expect that the people themselves, unless in the precedence of an unled revolution, would go to the oceans and check out white illegal immigrants by themselves. We believe when these people who are in government called for power to take over government, they said they want to use political power to achieve economic freedom. So we call on them to go where there are white illegal immigrants. Because by white illegal immigrants, we are talking about the real owners of the means of production. And in any case, why would government leaders tell us as young people here in this country that there are other white illegal immigrants, but who are facing Africans? We are dealing with the problem that we are able to confront because we are able to speak to our own brothers. We go closely to them and speak to them and tell them that it is simply in the context that we want to fix the country and we want to encourage you to go and fix your own countries. But of course, this would be misconceptualized as we engage and as days are unfolding. But really, it's an absurd argument to tell people who are so organized, because we are talking about hundreds of thousands of South Africans who are marching in each and every city, in each and every town. You cannot delegitimize their feelings and their concerns. Instead, government should be coming on board and trying to find a solution that Africa on Africa cannot have violence in between. There must be a solution to the current crisis. And after this solution, all of us united as one Africa must then confront the problem of white illegal immigration. This is where we come from as PAYCO.
Right.
We believe African problems deserve African solutions, and we'll deal with the external factors when all African problems have been settled.
So I'm just wondering perhaps what you would say to people who, Nigerians, Malawians, Zimbabweans, who are married to South Africans. What do you say to them, both male and females, and their children? For some of them, they've known no other country or place than South Africa. Perhaps father Nigerian or father Malawian or mother Malawian and father South African. What do you say to such children?
Well, I mean, it's like we said, this is a very unfortunate experience for African people. And, you know, a child that was born here in South Africa is a South African. It's only a difficult question of whether parents should separate with their children or whether wives should separate with their husbands, as the case may be. This is what I was trying to explain earlier, that at the meso level of analysis, we look at society and its interrelations on the basis of social groupings, and the family structure is part of those social groupings. From where we are, would appreciate an engagement, because in fact, if you look at the people who are called African illegal immigrants, these are mainly people from the SADC countries. I think there are many platforms in the SADC space that would permeate real decisions that could affect the resolving of these problems that we are faced with. Maybe then, because I mean, when we're listening to the arguments by Usis Jacinta, Upagulum Tagati, and Ungizwe Mkhunu and other activists on the ground, their point is not to say Africans must go permanently and never come back to South Africa. Apparently, their argument is that go and fix your own countries, but when you come to South Africa, you must come with papers. You must come as legal persons, and we will never chase you out.
The more you say this, it's perhaps disheartening for some people. There are videos of people from Nigeria, Malawi, and Zimbabwe who were saying, look, I have my papers. I went through the process of documentation. So I don't know how you, but let me go and ask you a direct question, because I know this issue is also political. If your party was in power, for instance, how would you tackle groups like the March and the Odudola, I don't know if it's Odudula or whatever, I don't know how it's pronounced, but how would you tackle such groups who have decided to take this up and harass and go to the shops of other Africans, and cut away with their goods and all of that?
Primarily, as a party, like we say, there would have never been a situation where these types of protests in communities are taking place. These protests, my brother, are taking place primarily because people are not receiving services. If people were receiving direct services from government, there would never be a complaint that our African brothers are here taking jobs and so forth. Government is supposed to service its people. If we were in government, the first thing that we would have done is to sit down with Operation Tutula. We sit down with March and March, and we understand exactly where they are coming from. We want to understand their theoretical underpinnings, and we want to then get exactly where they want to go or what exactly they want to achieve. would have easily met them halfway and would go then and sit down with all our African brothers and their representative structures in the country and have an African solution to an African problem. If we would agree on one issue, it would be that there is no foreigner who is African in any African country, in the same way that the West are doing. People can move from each and any country in the West to the other without a passport or anything. Our position would be the same, that Africa must be one, Africa is one, and our message is that of African unity, because African unity is exactly what we are fighting for. The other issues that we are experiencing, unfortunately, these are what maybe people would call convoluted, otherwise summatively, casualties, so to say, casual instances of the revolution that is about to ensue, would have kept the revolution that would be unled.
Swani, we can debate about this over and over, but it looks like the black Africans or the Africans themselves are the soft target here, which is why I gave a clear, direct poser with Western Cape run by DEA, especially places like Cape Town. In fact, I tell people until I see it happening in some of those neighborhoods, then I'll take this seriously, which is why we say there's also political intricacy in all of it. We can't dismiss that. The politics is in the open. But let's talk about basic housekeeping by South Africa itself, because you mentioned this in passing. If the government will do what they have to do, the people will not have to do what, because they are now saying, for instance, EFF President Julius Malema, when the Ghanaians had left, 300 of them went back to Ghana. He said, now that the Ghanaians have left, where are the 300 jobs you've created in replacement? In fact, people are even arguing to the point that, why are you even talking about jobs? Why are you not talking about creating enterprise itself? So now that you've chased out 300 people who themselves may have created jobs for both South Africans and non-South Africans, have you been able to create those jobs, as to speak? Because there are nuances around the fact that some South Africans are lazy. That is the nuance. So you can reply to that. Julius Malema has argued that some are educated, they don't want to take low-level jobs. That's why they don't do the kind of jobs they do. Others are saying some are outrightly lazy. You bring them to come and work for you, they will not come to work 2 days and 3. They have excuses and all of these things. How do you respond to this? Because these are people who live and work and have their lived-in reality within South Africa itself. So let's talk about South Africans and these marchers and the basic housekeeping before you blame others for your problems as well, because that's actually where it starts from.
No, thank you very much. I think it's quite upset. It's even very perturbing to listen to a president of another political party commanding so many masses of our people. And on the other platforms, like television, tells the very same masses that they are lazy. I think it's an insult to our people who would never agree with such sentiments, that South Africans are lazy, or the sentiments that suggest that South Africans have got a preference of job opportunities because in whatever case they went to school and therefore they feel that they cannot take jobs that they did not go to school for. That's a very weird argument from a person who calls himself a Pan-Africanist. And really, we don't want to turn this interview session into an individual attack or anything of that sort. We simply have a view that there is no basis at all in whatever the EFF president has said, and we fully do not agree with him in this problem that we are faced with as a people. But to give you a context, is that, in terms of the housekeeping problems of South Africa, we have leveled issues against government. There is a problem of endemic corruption in South Africa. We said there is a failure to enforce immigration laws. I can argue with you now that we cannot delegitimize the reality that our African brothers and sisters came to our country illegally. In this case, we are arguing for a borderless Africa, an Africa that is one, an Africa that is able to trade amongst themselves without any limitations. But for where we are, there are borders in literally each and every country across Africa. And if I was to live here in South Africa and go to Nigeria, for example, and enter Nigeria illegally, I would be arrested right upon my arrival. I won't be wasted time upon, there won't be any engagements, there won't be debates that you broke our laws. I'll be arrested and I'll be deported back to South Africa without any question. Our African brothers and sisters come to our country illegally. Would appreciate Pan-Africanists agree with us on this one, that Pan-Africanism does not mean a porous flooding of illegality from one country to the other, and we try to justify that by replacing the challenge of the fact that people came in illegally. So they must fix the part that they must not come illegally. They must go and come legally first. They must go and fix the countries. They must go and fix their paperwork. And another challenge that we put to our South African government is that majority of the people who are now illegal in this particular argument is people who came to South Africa predominantly legally. These are people who had papers when they were coming to South Africa, most of them. But their documentation expired while they are here in the country. And it is not their fault that their documentation expired. And when they apply, they are taken back and forth, and they end up becoming illegal residents in this country. It is a problem of government as well, because it is also recorded in the South African history that illegal immigrants are able to vote in the South African polity. So if illegal immigrants are able to vote in the South African polity, you would agree indeed that there is a great level of complicity of the government, because they know that if these illegal immigrants are able to forge even voting, these people then would keep us and sustain our stay in parliament, where they enjoy benefits. I think at the bottom of the problem is a government that is unwilling to fix its own kitchen, but met with also a fluctuating number of people who are from otherwise Africa coming into South Africa.
Allow me
the government can then go back to
allow me squeezing,
the drawing board.
Yes, allow me squeezing this question if you can answer in 40 seconds or less. I wonder if perhaps South Africans are aware that they have other South Africans who are resident in other countries and who have businesses. For instance, here in Nigeria, one of the biggest cable network, DSTV, many Nigerians use that to watch programs on TV. I don't know if South Africans are aware that they own that business. MTN Nigeria, for instance, as well. Two big businesses. And there are those who are questioning perhaps if their licenses should be revoked. So how do you advise those from other countries who have had to suffer this to react to how their citizens have been treated in South Africa?
Well, thank you very much. Again, we believe strongly that South Africa is a capitalist state as it is, and there is a misconception from our African brothers and sisters all over that maybe when they cancel licenses of various South African companies operating in different parts of the continent, they are actually probably deactivating the South African economy, and that is not the case. The South African economy is not predominantly ran by DSTV, neither is it ran by MTN. If Nigeria decides to cut the over 120 businesses that are based in Nigeria, and that came legally, and that provided documentation to the government, and that paid the levy to the Nigerian government to be able to operate their businesses, and they are not operating their businesses without permits, and most importantly, they are not operating their businesses in those countries as illegal immigrants. It is very important that when we level this argument against South Africans, we also check whether there are South Africans in other parts of the continent who are there in these countries illegally. Because what we would say then is the same position that, yes, there is no foreigner in any African country across, but people must not leave their countries illegally to enter illegally in other countries, even here in Africa, and call that Pan-Africanism. That is the problem that we are faced with. So Nigeria can, in fact, would even encourage Nigeria to cut the networks of or the business operations of either MTN or DSTV. Those channels do not serve any purpose for our people here in South Africa. MTN sells very expensive data for our people here in South Africa. So whether Nigeria cuts their business, it works exactly good for us, because we are given then an opportunity to bring our innovation in terms of data must fall out, because we do not even afford the data from MTN. I think that is our position.
Absolutely. You've made your case, you've made your points. The arguments will continue. There are those who would say, argue that there are those who have papers, who are legal migrants and who have been harassed and treated in unprintable words and all of that called unprintable names. We'll have to leave it here. Presidential spokesperson for Pan-Africanist Youth Congress of Zania, PAYCO. Thank you indeed, Mr. Feswani Palele. Thank you indeed for your time on the program.
Much appreciated, my brother. Thank you very much, and beautiful day to all your listeners across. Thank you so much.
All right. It's interesting to see the brotherhood on TV. We hope this extends to our brothers indeed who are in South Africa and they are treated better. This is the Morning Brief. We're not done with you just yet. After this moment, we get to talk about something really essential, which has been in the pipeline for quite some time now, the switch over. We'll tell you all about it in just a moment. Please stay with us.